the argument is that Islam had forced conversions. Well, here are some key points before we unpack this. Number one, forced conversions are not equal to territorial expansion. Yes, Islam expanded territorially through military engagement, and that's a well-known historical fact. However, expanding the territory does not imply forced conversions. Especially when we understand that when Islam expanded to Spain and North Africa, the Muslims had a system of governance that allowed Christians and Jews to live peacefully. They were not forced to become Muslim. And there are so many academics that echo this. Take, for example, Professor of History, David J. Wasserstein. And you could read this for yourself. One feature that's characterized the preaching of Islam and conversion to that faith over the last 14 centuries is the general absence, other than in cases of conversion of an entire state or group for political reasons, of compulsion. Justified by a sentence in the Quran, there is no compulsion in religion. The prohibition thus implied has been largely honored, and so on and so forth. He even argues that what stands out in these accounts is not just occasionally the forced converts were allowed to return to the original faiths. So if someone was forced to leave Islam, like Maimonides, Musa bin Maymun, he's considered the second Moses of the Jewish tradition. There's some accounts that say that he was forced to become Muslim. He memorized the Quran, then he went back to Judaism, and the ulama of the time didn't punish him because they said he wasn't Muslim in the first place. You can't force someone to become Muslim. Said Thomas Arnold in his Preaching of Islam, same thing. Such statement is too frequent a commonplace of the ecclesiastical historian to be accepted in the absence of contemporary evidence. Or forced conversion or anything like persecution in the early days of the Arab conquest, we hear nothing. Scholar of history, Raihan Dozi, he says something very similar. The unbounded tolerance of the Arabs must be also taken into account. In religious matters, they put pressure on no man. Christians preferred their rule to that of the Franks. British Orientalist De Lacy E. O'Leary, he says, history makes it clear, however, that the legend of fanatical Muslims sweeping through the world and forcing Islam at the point of the sword upon conquered races is one of the most fantastically absurd myths that historians have ever repeated. Historian Lawrence E. Brown, same thing. Incidentally, these well-established facts dispose of the ideas so widely fostered in Christian writings that the Muslims, wherever they went, forced people to accept Islam at the point of the sword. Medieval historian Hugh Kennedy, same thing. What did the Jews say about Islam's territorial expansion? They didn't say we were forced. Zayn Zohar, a Jewish historian, what does he say? Thus, when Muslims crossed the Straits of Gibraltar from North Africa in 711 CE and invaded the Iberian Peninsula, Jews welcomed them as liberators from Christian persecution. Heinrich Grat, a Christian historian, same thing. He says the Spanish rules came under the rule of Mohammedans, and he says that they were kindly treated, obtained a religious liberty, of which they had so long been deprived. What about Christians on Islam's territorial expansion? Raihan Dozi, he's an authority of early Islamic Spain. He said the unbounded tolerance of the Arabs must also be taken into account. In religious matters, they put pressure on no man. Ulick R. Burke, in A History of Spain, he says, Christians do not suffer in any way on account of the religion at the hands of the Moors, i.e. the Muslims. Not only perfect toleration, but nominal equality was the rule of the Arabs in Spain. So in general, there was no forced conversions.